battle against Edgar Thornwood. Edgar Thornwood was no ordinary man. A necromancer who had conquered the mystery of living death. He had forged himself into something beyond human, beyond even the undead. A master of his craft, Edgar created a serum born from plagues, vampire blood, and dark alchemy, turning himself into something that could never truly live and never truly die. Now he stood across from Eldritch, the only man to have ever passed the first trial. The champion of Necros had been waiting. Edgar had no desire for prolonged battle. He wanted to end this quickly and return to the only thing that mattered, his wife, Lily. Many years ago, Necros had made him an offer, serve as his champion, and in return, Lily, whom a vampire had taken from him, would be restored to him. And now a vampire stood before him, challenging his place. "You are one of them," Edgar growled, stepping forward. His skeletal face flickered in and out of his human form, his voice filled with venom. "One of those who took my Lily. I will destroy you for Necros, but more than that, I will destroy you for her." Eldritch remained still. He studied Edgar, analysing every detail. He could already feel it. This was an unwinnable fight. Even as an elder, he would have struggled against this opponent. Now, stripped of his powers, his weapons and his allies, he had nothing. Nothing but his words. Eldritch took a breath and sat down. "I have taken the lives of thousands," he admitted, his voice calm, almost reflective. "I have lived for nearly 12 centuries, watching gods rise and fall. I have seen kingdoms built from the blood of the weak, and I have watched them crumble just as easily." Edgar's glowing eyes narrowed. "Then you admit what you are? A parasite, feeding on the innocent?" Eldritch shook his head. "I never took a life that had not already taken from others." Silence. "As a man, I led armies against invaders, those who slaughtered and stole. I fought to prove that force is never the answer, that for every tyrant who seeks to rule with power, there will always be someone willing to stand against them. I fought so that those who could not fight would have a chance to live." He let his words settle before continuing. "And as an elder, I fed only on those who fed on others. The liars, the thieves, the parasites who preyed on the weak. I have drained kings and beggars alike, but all of them had taken far more than I ever did." Edgar's fists clenched. "And that makes you righteous. You killed. You destroyed lives. Did you ever stop to wonder if they had families? If they had children waiting for them to come home?" Eldritch met his gaze, unflinching. "Do you ask the fisherman if the fish he catches has offspring?" Edgar hesitated. "I knew every soul I took. I looked them in the eye. I studied their sins. I judged them before I fed." Eldritch leaned forward. "Can you say the same? Do you know the names of those you have slaughtered? Did you pause to consider whether they were truly innocent? Or did you simply act on the pain in your heart, letting rage and grief turn you into something blind?" The arena was silent. Eldritch had done what he did best. He planted doubt. Edgar Thornwood, the man who had once sought to kill Necros himself, the greatest necromancer to ever live, now hesitated, and hesitation was all Eldritch needed. Edgar's skeletal face twisted with rage. "It matters not," he spat. "I have transcended death itself. I am Necros champion, and I will complete my task. I need only to kill you, and then I will return to my love." Eldritch remained still, unshaken by the outburst. He had seen rage like this before, blind, consuming, self-righteous, and he had learned long ago that the angrier a man became, the easier he was to control. "Yes, kill me," Eldritch said, his voice eerily calm. Do as you have always done. Strike out through rage, through selfishness. I am but a man. I have no power, no weapons. I am weak. I cannot best you in battle. That is the truth, Edgar. Edgar took a step forward, his fists clenched, shadows swirling around his form. I fight these trials for survival, Eldritch continued, his voice steady. Not for glory, not for revenge. I sacrifice my existence as an elder for a friend, so that he may live. That was my choice, and I accepted it. Should I complete these trials, I will return to those I care for. But should I fail, then I will be forgotten, just as you have been. Edgar's face darkened. Forgotten? I have not been forgotten. Then tell me, Edgar, Eldritch pressed. Who speaks your name beyond these halls? Who remembers you as the man you once were, rather than the thing you have become? The necromancer hesitated. Eldritch seized the moment. You've only been here since the 1960s. You walked the mortal world in the age of steel and fire, a world of men who had abandoned the old ways for industry and war. But now, you are alone in a realm of death, where time is meaningless and your name is lost. The world you knew has moved on without you, Edgar. You kill for the sake of returning to Lily. You have justified every life you have taken as a necessary step toward that goal. But go ahead, Edgar. Kill me. Eldritch spread his arms wide, welcoming the death that did not come. Edgar stood frozen. My friends will mourn my loss, Eldritch continued. Just as you have mourned Lily, they will feel the same sorrow, the same pain. And when they do, when my death consumes them the way Lily's death consumed you, you will have become the very thing you hate. Silence. Eldritch had played his trump card. Killing him now would make Edgar no different than those who stole Lily from him. It would prove that his rage had made him into the same monster he swore to destroy. For the first time in decades, Edgar Thornwood felt something he had not felt since he became death itself. Doubt. Edgar's stance wavered. The weight of Eldritch's words crushed him like a mountain. He struggled against them, against the truth that had been laid bare before him. The rage that had fueled him for decades felt hollow, empty. His arm dropped to his side. His summoned creature, a monstrous thing of sinew and bone, shrieked once before dissolving into the ground beneath them. Eldritch remained still. He had gambled everything on his words, and now he watched as his opponent unravelled. Edgar's voice was hoarse, heavy. What then do you suggest? Before Eldritch could answer, the ground trembled, and the arena was bathed in an eerie, crimson glow. A towering shadow loomed over them, ancient and unfathomable. Necros. The god of the undead descended into the arena, his eyes twin orbs of black fire, his skeletal form wrapped in a cloak of swirling darkness. He did not move, but his presence alone sent waves of pressure through the air. What is this? Necros' voice echoed like thunder, rattling the very bones of the arena. Kill this man, Edgar. You are my champion. You have sworn yourself to me. Edgar did not move. His fingers curled into fists, trembling at his sides. Necros took a step forward, the ground beneath him rotting and turning to dust. Do not make me repeat myself. But Edgar only shook his head, his face pale, hollow. I cannot. The silence that followed was suffocating. Necros' eyes burned with fury. What? I cannot. Edgar's voice was firmer now, though it quivered with the weight of his guilt. I have already killed more than I should. I have already destroyed more lives than I can count. I have become what I hate. I am defeated. Necros' rage was immeasurable. The god's skeletal fingers curled into fists, his voice rising to an ear-splitting roar. You dare defy me? You dare question me? You dare betray me? Edgar's face was downcast. his voice barely above a whisper. "I have already dared everything, even to betray myself. I became a killer of lives, a destroyer of families, a parasite feeding on my own grief." He exhaled, the burden of centuries pressing down upon him. "I will not do it again." For a moment, the arena was silent. Then Necros raised his arms, and the world itself shuddered. The power he wielded was beyond comprehension, an ancient force that could unravel existence itself. The very air crackled with death, the shadows contorted into unspeakable forms, and the walls of the arena trembled under his wrath. Eldritch braced himself, his mind racing, knowing that the true battle was only just beginning. Necros's skeletal fingers curled into claws, his form towering over Eldritch, his very presence threatening to crush the life from the mortal man before him. The god of the undead had been defied. No one had ever completed his trial, and he would not allow it to happen now. "I will kill him myself," Necros declared, his voice a storm of wrath and darkness. "None may pass my trials." He raised his hand, death itself swirling at his fingertips, ready to erase Eldritch from existence. The air trembled as his power coalesced into a singularity of decay, a force that could end not just a man, but a soul. Then a voice rang out, calm but absolute. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." A golden portal opened beside them, its radiant glow cutting through the oppressive darkness of the arena. From it stepped Winter, clad in his long black coat, his chrome mask reflecting the dim glow of the dead realm. Winter strode forward with measured steps. His presence was like an anchor in a world of shifting death, a singularity of unshakable will amidst the chaos. Necros's burning eyes narrowed. "You dare enter my realm without invitation?" Winter tilted his head slightly. "You would dare unbalance the trial with interference, Necros?" His voice carried no anger, no arrogance, only certainty. "I was alerted to your actions by reality itself. I am here to see that this remains a fair trial." Eldritch turned to face him. Their eyes met. Though Winter's mask hid his expression, Eldritch knew. Winter had not forgotten. Eldritch had sacrificed everything for him. Necros seethed. "You are but a man, and yet you speak as if you hold dominion here. You overstep your bounds, keeper of balance." Winter exhaled, almost as if sighing at an old, tired argument. "And yet, here I am," Necros roared, his patience snapping. "Then I will smite you where you stand." With a single motion, Necros unleashed his full fury. The sky above split open, an abyssal void from which tendrils of death cascaded down, each one capable of erasing existence. The entire arena collapsed inward, the sheer force of his wrath bending the very fabric of the realm. The power of death itself struck Winter, and Winter did not move. The energy wrapped around him like a storm raging against an unshakable mountain. Necros's power screamed as it tried to consume him, to erase him, to reduce him to dust. But it failed. Winter stood there, untouched. Winter cocked his head. "Haven't you tried this before?" Silence. Eldritch's eyes widened. He had seen gods wield unfathomable power. But Winter wasn't even phased. Necros's form flickered, his power thrashing against an immovable force. He knew reality itself would not allow him to intervene. Winter took a single step forward. "Now," he said, his voice even, "shall we continue?" The golden glow from the portal shimmered brighter as Winter's words echoed in the arena. "You will ensure this remains a fair match, Necros." A pause. Then Winter tilted his head slightly. "Or I will." The weight of reality settled over Necros, binding him to his own laws. The trial could not be altered. The battle must continue, without interference. Necros's fury crackled through the air, but he said nothing. He merely raised his hand, gesturing toward Edgar Thornwood. The fight would continue, this time without interference. Winter turned, but did not leave. Instead, he walked toward the edge of the arena, his arms folding behind his back as he observed the battlefield. "I will remain," he said, his tone matter-of-fact, "to ensure there are no more interruptions." Eldritch took a deep breath. He was alone in this fight, but not entirely. Winter was watching. Necros's eyes burned with resentment, but he could do nothing. He had already lost this battle. Now it was time for Eldritch and Edgar to begin theirs. The Battle of Champions. The arena was vast, ancient, and eerily silent. Cracks ran through its massive stone walls, remnants of long-forgotten battles. No audience watched, no crowd cheered. There were only 3 figures beneath the endless darkened sky: Eldritch, Edgar Thornwood, and the one who oversaw all things, Necros. Winter stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching silently. He had come to ensure the trial remained fair. Necros stepped forward, his presence unsettling the air around him. His hollow eyes studied Eldritch, then Edgar. "You wish to settle this with champions?" Eldritch stood tall. "I do. The strongest warrior is not always the one who swings the hardest. Sometimes the greatest battles are won with wits, not weapons." Necros let out a low, humorless chuckle. "And you think this will save you?" Eldritch's voice was unwavering. "I think it will prove what true power really is." Necros nodded. "Very well. Choose your champion." Edgar's choice, the devourer of kings. Edgar took a slow step forward and raised a hand. The earth trembled. From the depths of the arena floor, something massive clawed its way upward. A towering beast stitched together from the corpses of fallen warriors. Their armor fused into its grotesque form. It pulsed with unholy energy, its many mouths whispering the screams of those it had consumed. "I choose the devourer of kings," Edgar declared, his voice steady. "It has slain rulers and conquerors alike. It knows only destruction." Necros nodded in approval. "A wise choice, Edgar. A creature of pure hunger, an unstoppable force." The arena shook under its weight. Eldritch did not flinch. Eldritch's choice, the smallest warrior. Eldritch knelt down. He reached out his hand, and a tiny bird fluttered onto his palm. A simple sparrow. Edgar stared, unmoving. Necros frowned. "Is this a joke?" Eldritch smiled. "This is my champion." Edgar's fingers curled into fists. "You mock this trial. This is not a battle. It is an insult." Eldritch only shook his head. "No, Edgar. This is the most dangerous champion of all." Winter, watching from the shadows, let the faintest smile creep across his face. He knew exactly what was coming. Necros exhaled, unimpressed. "So be it." He raised his hand. "Begin." The battle begins. The devourer of kings lunged forward, shaking the entire arena with its monstrous form. Its claws tore through the ground, sending shards of stone into the air. The sparrow took flight, effortlessly darting past the beast's massive swings. Again and again, the creature attacked, but it could not touch the bird. The arena echoed with the sounds of destruction, but never impact. Edgar's frustration grew. "This means nothing. One strike, and it is over." Eldritch remained calm. "Is it?" The sparrow weaved through the air, untouchable. The devourer of kings roared in frustration. It swung wildly, losing all strategy, all control. Its rage consumed it, but the sparrow simply continued to fly. And then the beast collapsed. Its own massive frame crumbled under its weight, unable to sustain its endless movements. The sparrow landed gently upon its head. With one final breath, the devourer of kings turned to dust. Edgar stared in disbelief. His champion had fallen, not because it was weak, but because it could not change. Eldritch stepped forward and spoke. "You chose destruction, Edgar. I chose survival. Look at them. You picked a thing that only knows hunger, rage, and violence. It cannot adapt. It cannot think. It cannot change. It is a prisoner to its own nature." The sparrow flitted about, untouched, free. This tiny creature has no weapons, no claws, no armor. It is weak. And yet, it is the master of this battlefield. Why? Because true power is not brute force, Edgar. True power is knowing how to survive, knowing how to move when the world rages against you, knowing when to fight and when to fly. True power is adaptability. Edgar lowered his head. His anger wavered. For the first time, he listened. A battle of words. The battle was over, but the true game had just begun. Edgar spoke, voice quieter. "I never considered that power could be something other than force." Eldritch sat down. "Let's talk, Edgar. Let's talk about what power really is. Let's talk about what you've done. And let's talk about the woman you lost." Edgar hesitated, but then he sat down across from him. A new kind of battle had begun. Winter and Necros, still observing, continued their conversation in the shadows of the arena. The trial was not over, but for the first time, Edgar Thornwood was no longer certain that he wanted to fight. For the first time in countless eons, Necros sat not as a god upon his throne, but as a student. Across from him, Winter spoke, his words deliberate, his tone calm, yet carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "You misunderstand the Ender, Necros," Winter said. "You believe it to be destruction, oblivion, the final silence. But the Ender is not the end. It is the transition. It is the force that ensures nothing remains unchanged forever. Even you, even the gods, are not beyond its reach. Necros, the god of undeath, the eternal shepherd of the lost, watched Winter closely. His power over death was immense, but even he had been humbled by the knowledge that there existed something greater. "You speak of the Ender as though you have seen it and walked away." Winter's gaze was steady. "I have, and I won." Necros's hollow eyes darkened. "Impossible. Even reality itself bows before the Ender." Winter smiled faintly. "And yet, I am here." For the first time in eternity, Necros was silent. He had believed himself beyond such things, but now he sat in the presence of a man who had defied even the inevitable. On the other side of the arena, two men sat in quiet conversation. Edgar Thornwood, a being neither truly alive nor truly dead, studied Eldritch. "You speak with conviction," Edgar said, "as though you have always believed these things. But I see something else. Doubt. This was not always your truth, was it?" Eldritch smirked, but there was no arrogance in it, only understanding. "You are right. I had the pieces of it for centuries, but I did not truly grasp it. Not until I met her." Edgar raised a brow. "Her." Eldritch exhaled slowly. "A woman, a mere mortal, but she saw through the illusions that bind men. She did not worship gods or bow before fate. She did not seek safety in the arms of rulers or the false comfort of the masses. She stood alone, not because she was forced to, but because she knew that to follow without reason was to surrender the only thing that made her human, her mind. Edgar's curiosity deepened. What did she teach you that you did not already know? Eldritch's gaze was distant, yet unwavering. That force is not about imposing your will upon others. It is about mastering yourself, that men are not slaves to destiny, nor are they the playthings of gods or kings. The only thing that can ever truly own a man is his own mind, and the moment he gives that up, through fear, through blind obedience, through surrender, he ceases to be a man at all. Edgar clenched his jaw. And what did she say of death? Eldritch's smirk returned. That death is the final trade. Every man pays for the life he chooses. Some sell their lives cheaply, giving them away for power, for comfort, for the illusion of control. But the wise, they understand the cost. They live on their own terms, and when the price is due, they pay it gladly, knowing they have spent their time well. Edgar fell into silence. For the first time since his own death, something in him stirred. He had spent so many years consumed by vengeance, fueled by loss, his every action a reaction to his pain. But had he ever truly chosen his own path? This woman, Edgar finally said, what was her name? Eldritch smiled, but he did not answer. It does not matter. Only her words remain. But in his mind, he could still hear her voice, sharp, unwavering, challenging him in ways no god ever had. In the shadows, Necros and Winter continued their quiet war of ideas, one of logic against inevitability, of reason against divine decree. In the arena, Eldritch and Edgar spoke not as enemies, nor as warriors, but as men seeking the truth. A battle had been fought, a war had been waged, and yet this moment of quiet understanding, was the real battle, and Eldritch was winning. Time had lost meaning. No one knew how long had passed, only that the conversation between Eldritch and Edgar, and Winter and Necros, had changed the course of the trial in ways none had expected. It was Necros who finally broke the silence. His voice, deep as the graves he ruled, echoed through the vast arena. This trial is ended. All eyes turned to him. Necros looked directly at Eldritch. You are the victor. You have completed my 2 trials. Eldritch gave a slow nod, but there was no celebration in his expression, no triumph. He had won not by force, but by reason, and reason demanded he recognize the truth. He had only won because Necros himself had interfered. Necros, as if sensing the thought, smirked. Do not let this victory give you false confidence, mortal. You succeeded here because I allowed it. Eldritch's sharp gaze did not falter. You say that as though I had no part in it. Necros let out a deep, amused laugh. Oh, you played your part well, Eldritch, but without my interference, you would have failed. It was my influence that allowed the warriors of old to stand beside you. It was I who permitted you to challenge Edgar in a battle of champions. It was I who let you pull him into your philosophy, and without me, Winter would not have arrived. Eldritch frowned. Then why help me? Necros leaned forward, his hollow eyes glowing. Because you interest me, mortal. You are different from the ones before you. You see things not as a god would, nor as a man would, but as something in between. You have clarity, yet you have doubt. You fight not for power, but for something greater, and I wish to see what that is. He stepped closer, his tone shifting to something colder. But understand this. The trials ahead will not be the same. If you arrive in Lizanor's realm, he will not interfere. He will not offer you a single ounce of mercy." The very mention of Lisanor, the god of the lichens, made the air heavy with tension. Necros continued, his voice growing darker. "And Nocturna will do everything in his power to make you fail." Eldritch remained still, absorbing the weight of what had been said. Necros turned to Edgar Thornwood, his champion. "You fought as well as any could against this one," he said. "No one could have foreseen his trick. No one could have anticipated a bird." A brief wry smile crossed Edgar's lips. No one could have." Necros dismissed him with a wave of his hand. "Go. Return to your love, as promised." Edgar bowed slightly, then turned and walked into the darkness of the arena, where he would vanish back into the afterlife he had fought so hard to preserve. Then Necros turned to Winter. "You will stay?" Winter raised an eyebrow. "And why is that?" Necros folded his arms. "Because I must hear more of the Ender." Winter gave a knowing smirk. "Ah, you cannot help yourself, can you? Even gods seek answers." Necros only grinned. The crimson tear in Eldritch's hand began to glow, brighter and brighter, until the entire arena was bathed in crimson light. Then he was gone. Winter and Necros stood in the empty arena, the echoes of the battle already fading. Necros turned to Winter, his expression unreadable. "Tell me more." And so, two of the most powerful beings in existence stood together, not as enemies, but as seekers of knowledge. Some battles were fought with swords, others with words, and some, like this one, with the eternal pursuit of truth.